Good morning. It's the first Saturday in May, and it's gorgeous out. Normally this time of day, my dad and I would be making our way up to our seats at Churchill Downs, getting ready for the Kentucky Derby is going to take place. But that's not happening today, sadly. It'll run, but it's going to run in September, on the first Saturday in September. Since I'm doing these video blog things, I thought that I would actually pull out the article that I wrote about my dad and I going to the Kentucky Derby. I wrote this a couple years ago, and it still rings true even today. So keep in mind that I wrote this a week before the Derby that year. I even say in here, it's now a week until the Kentucky Derby, the greatest 2 minutes in sports. And those of you who know me are aware at the writing of this. I've been following the horses for months, started the process of checking the advanced weather reports. By the way, it's 85 degrees and sunny there today, as opposed to the rainstorms we had the last couple of years. I already have various outfits laid out around my closet for possible Derby day attire. This is one of my shirts, actually from last year. I will attempt to paint the picture of this amazing spectacle, but more importantly, the traditional pilgrimage I take with my dad. Years ago, Doug Sr. used to travel for his job. In the summer, he would take his family with him on these cool little getaways. One of these trips took us to the state of Kentucky, in the city of Louisville. Louisville, as the town folk call it. It was that trip that did it for me. Dad made his appointed rounds in the morning and early afternoon, and then he and I ventured over to this place called Churchill Downs afterwards. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time, and I'd watched the Derby on television since I could remember. I can still picture that feeling I had as we drove down Taylor Boulevard, getting closer and closer. There they were, the Twin Spires. We made a right turn down Central Avenue into the parking lot, and it was all I could do not to bust out of the car and go running toward the entrance. Once inside, I was taken by the beauty and the tradition of this place. The musty, rustic smells of the wood, the bricked walkways, the impeccable cleanliness, the inviting people. The names of past winners of the Derby encircled the paddock. I could feel the likes of Whirlaway, Sir Barton, Galton Fox making their presence known. I was hooked. Oh my, I was hooked. And long before I knew what a bucket list was, it was that day that I knew I must attend the Kentucky Derby at some point in my life. So for various reasons, it took many years to realize this dream, and year after year, my dad and I would still make a point to at least go to the races there, even when he stopped traveling. It reinforced my desire and passion to get to this place on the first Saturday in May. Tickets were hard to come by. They were the rite of passage and passed down from generation to generation, and once you had them, you had them. All you had to do was write a letter to retain them each year. So as an adult, I started writing letters requesting tickets. And year after year, I received the same letter, basically SOL, bud. But in 1994, it happened. My best friend was married to a girl whose parents lived in Louisville, and before he could ask the question, the answer was yes. Yes, I would love to go. It rained for 36 straight hours. I was soaked to the bone, but I had an absolute blast. I didn't have the winner that year, Go for Gin, but I couldn't wait to go next year. It was 2001 that I started including phone calls in addition to my letters. And then finally, those words steeped in Leanne Shellman's sweetest southern drawl. Okay, Doug, I may have something for you. Let me call you back. And call back she did. She said the one stipulation was that I had to buy the Oaks tickets for Friday, as well as the Derby tickets. I told her at that point I would have bought the whole week, the whole season, the whole year. It didn't matter. And from then on, year after year, I had my tickets. I couldn't get my dad to go with me until the year after my son Trevor was born in 2006, and my wife couldn't go. He had been hesitant to go because of crowds, the weather, etc., but finally the man who started all this was going to take the rightful place in the seat at the Kentucky Derby on the first Saturday in May, right next to his son. My dad is not nearly as open with his feelings and emotions as I am, but I knew. I knew what he was feeling. I watched him as we approached the gate, as the Twin Spires came closer and closer and bigger with each step. It took me back some 34 years when he first brought me to this place. With all due respect and appreciation to all the people I went to the Derby with before, This was the pinnacle for me, one of the best days of my life. Dad overcame any anxiety he had pretty quickly, and he had an absolute incredible time. And he had the winner that day, Barbaro. He was the life of the party. People loved him. They loved us together. They loved our story. I wrote years ago when this credit card ad was sweeping the nation about how Derby tickets cost so much money and the Derby attire cost so much money and food and drinks was so much money, but that drinking mint juleps with your dad on the first Saturday in May at the Kentucky Derby was priceless. And this still holds true 12 years later. So much so that I had another friend approach me about he and his dad joining us on this trip. He had seen the pictures, heard the stories, and wanted to experience this phenomenon with his dad as well. So the plan was put into motion, and they joined us last year. Before the first race on Saturday, he turned to me and he said, "Count me in. I'm hooked already as well." So I got to watch him interact with his dad, as so many people have watched us over the years. And that moment when the post-parade passes us, with my old Kentucky home being played by the Louisville Marching Band, that priceless moment with a mint julep in one hand and our other hand draped on the shoulder of our dad, that moment when the tears from my buddy's eyes made their presence as they rolled down his cheek behind his sunglasses, almost on cue with the tears and shivers that I feel each time I experience that same moment. We exchange hugs, and then the excitement mounts to an almost unimaginable crescendo as the horses approach the starting gate. It is now post time. Then, barely audible, you hear the track announcer say, "And they're all in." And bang, the gates open, and an even bigger roar comes from the crowd of 160,000 people. And they're off in the Kentucky Derby. It takes about 2 minutes for these amazing animals to travel the exhilarating 1.25 miles. They run away from us, and we wait with incredible anticipation as they run back towards us, and down the stretch they come to the finish line. Wow. It's almost as if the 160,000 must all need to reach for a cigarette as the winning horse is draped in a blanket of roses. I'll never forget the first time I saw the Twin Spires in person. I get that same feeling 45 years later. I'm with that same person that introduced this place to me, and I would have it no other way. I hope at some point that my son Trevor will go and have the same experience as well. I always hearken back to the drive home the first year my dad went. We drove in silence for about the first 30 minutes as we left Kentucky. The first words spoken were from my dad. "When will Bridget know she's going next year?" The man that was apprehensive about going couldn't wait to go back. So, the Derby's not running today, but it's running September 5th. So, I will toast first Roger and Kelly and Dave and Holly and Tom and my dad and the 160,000 people that I'll see and my new friends that I'll meet that day. So, here it is. It's not post time, but it's Woodford Reserve. It's mint juleps. It's still the first Saturday in May. So cheers, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. Enjoy the day.